I stopped my car under a random tree on the street, wiping my forehead with my shirt. It had been a very hot summer so far, and being out during the day wasn't exactly the best option. I'd been driving for Uber for about 2 weeks now, just as something to do with my summer break from teaching English at the local middle school. The app pinged and I glanced down. Another fare just a few minutes away. I sighed, already dreading it. The heat was unbearable today. Even with the AC cranked up, passengers getting in and out made it difficult to keep the cabin cool. I could feel how wet the back of my shirt was against the seat. 3 figures emerged from a low-end apartment complex. 2 were enormous black women, their bodies straining against floral sundresses that looked like they might burst from the pressure at any moment. The 3rd was a skinny white man with sunburnt shoulders who scurried ahead of them, carrying multiple plastic bags. I watched in amusement as he directed his companions to the car before hurrying to the passenger seat up front. The women waddled towards me, their flesh jiggling with every step. One paused by the rear door, panting heavily before she even got inside. "Excuse me, sir," she wheezed, wiping her forehead with a crumpled tissue that looked like it was already finished. "Could you push your seat up? I can barely fit back here." I glanced over at the man to my right as he got in. Scrawny arms and legs poking out from under an ill-fitting polo shirt, hair thinning on top despite not looking particularly old. "Of course," I mumbled, reaching behind me to slide the seat forward as far as it would go. The woman grunted in appreciation before heaving herself into the back seat with a series of groans and wheezes that made it difficult to hide my revulsion. I could already smell it before the other woman got in, an overwhelming stench of body odor that simmered right up my nostrils without asking. Rolling down the windows would turn the cabin into a literal sauna, which didn't seem like a good choice either. This was going to be a long ride. Her companion followed suit on the other side, even more massive than her friend if such a thing was possible. She settled in with an audible thud, causing the suspension to dip dangerously low. I said nothing as I began to drive, and could feel every bump through the steering wheel as we pulled out onto the highway. The man up front fidgeted nervously while one of the girls coughed, hacking phlegmy extrusions that sounded like something from a tuberculosis ward back in World War II Europe. He kept shooting me apologetic looks whenever she let loose another wet, gurgling rasp. I tried to focus on the road, but it was impossible with their combined stench filling up every inch of space inside my car. The AC blasted cold air directly onto my face, yet I could still taste it. Rancid sweat mixed with some sort of perfume that, if anything, just made the body odor worse. The non-coughing woman started talking about her latest doctor's appointment and how they told her she needed surgery from something called deep vein thrombosis. She spoke so casually, as if discussing what kind of salad dressing would pair well with their lunch order later that day, instead of impending death by blood clot explosion. I gripped the steering wheel tighter as a semi passed to my left. The app showed that there was only about 7 minutes before we reached the drop-off location, but it couldn't come quick enough. I didn't want to inhale whatever was being hacked up in the back or the foul odor any longer than I had to. I kept my eyes fixed straight ahead, trying to take short, shallow breaths from directly in front of me. The man next to me shifted uncomfortably in his seat, crossing one skinny leg over the other before uncrossing them again almost immediately. He kept shooting furtive glances my way from the corner of his eye, quick little darting looks like a nervous bird watching for predators. I couldn't help but wonder what kind of relationship he had with either woman back there. The thought was not something I wanted to think. How could anyone willingly choose to be intimate with something so grotesque? Wouldn't the sheer weight crush him instantly? My mind wandered down dark paths, imagining scenarios I wish I hadn't. His frail body pinned beneath a mountain of blubber, unable to breathe as she slowly suffocated him between her thighs. Or worse yet, what if she died in her sleep one day and he woke up buried under all that dead flesh? I shook the thought away violently. The woman in back let out another hacking cough. I flinched hard enough to drive us a bit onto the shoulder, but managed to correct just in time. Nobody said anything, so maybe they didn't notice. "Sorry," she wheezed through labored breaths. "It's this heat. It makes everything worse." I nodded mutely, keeping my eyes fixed straight ahead. The man cleared his throat awkwardly beside me, and I tensed up immediately, bracing myself for whatever horror was about to spill forth next. "So, you do this often?" he asked tentatively. "Do what?" "This." He gestured vaguely with one hand, ended by thin tendrils of fingers. "Driving people around all day." I glanced at him quickly before returning my gaze to the road. His eyes were oddly pale against such deep red skin, almost colorless except for a thin ring of blue around the edges. Something about them unsettled me deeply. I had never liked people with blue eyes. They just didn't look quite right to me. "Just started," I admitted warily, not wanting to give away too much personal information in case this turned into something worse than just an unpleasant ride with sweaty passengers. The woman behind me let out another wet, gurgling cough, ending the attempted small talk. I glanced into the rearview mirror again without meaning to, and saw legs the size of tree trunks sprawled across the back seat like uncooked hot dogs. They were so massive. How could anyone survive under all that weight? But then again, who was I to judge? Maybe this emaciated man beside me got off on being crushed beneath their combined bulk somehow. Maybe he liked the feeling of suffocation as they slowly smothered him alive between their thighs until there was nothing left but a broken husk of bone and a smile on his face. I cut myself off again, jaw clenching so hard my teeth hurt. This wasn't helping anything, least of all my own sanity, which felt like it might snap completely at any moment if I didn't get some fresh air soon. And God help me, there were still 4 minutes left before we reached our destination. The rest of the ride was devoid of any talking as I pulled up to the mall parking lot with a sense of relief so profound it felt almost physical, like someone had cut me free from invisible chains that had been slowly tightening around my throat. The AC continued to blast cold air directly onto my face, but I barely noticed, too focused on waiting for my passengers to finally extract themselves from my vehicle. It was a laborious process involving grunts and wheezing gasps as they heaved their bulk up through sheer force of will alone. It looked like watching two beached whales flopping around in agony. Sweat poured down their faces in rivulets, soaking into already damp wigs that clung wetly against flushed skin. The woman directly behind me managed to wriggle free first, though free might be generous given how she moved like a deflated balloon, dragging herself upright using the car door as leverage. She was very much a prisoner of her own body. She stood there panting heavily for several long moments before courageously letting go and moving towards the mall entrance. I glanced over at the other woman quickly, just long enough to confirm she was actually alive and conscious rather than having suffered some sort of massive stroke or heart attack right there beside me. Her eyes met mine briefly before darting away again. I couldn't tell if it was embarrassment or something else before she finally started the process of getting out of the car as well. She finally extricated herself, landing heavily on her feet like a boulder dropped from great height onto the concrete below. She wobbled precariously for several seconds before finding balance enough to straighten up fully. I caught myself holding my breath until she finally stabilized completely. The skinny man remained seated beside me throughout the entire spectacle, watching with an expression that was hard to read, something between amusement and admiration. His pale eyes glittered oddly in the sunlight streaming through the windshield as he turned his head slowly towards me. "What's wrong?" I asked warily when several long moments passed without either of us speaking or moving. We were just sitting there like two statues frozen mid-conversation, waiting for someone else to break the silence. And I wasn't really sure why he was still sitting there. He smiled then, lips stretching wide enough to show some teeth. It was a smile that didn't reach his eyes, which remained cold and calculating even as he replied smoothly, "Nothing at all, just enjoying the view." He motioned, and I glanced quickly back towards where one of the women stood panting heavily near my trunk, one hand braced on each fender for support while she tried to catch her breath after such an arduous journey from car seat to solid ground. The skinny man finally moved then, not towards the door, but deeper into his own seat instead, settling back against leather upholstery with a contented sigh that annoyed me. Why the hell wasn't he getting out? "What are you doing?" I asked sharply, trying to end the ride. He glanced over with one perfectly arched brow raised in mock surprise. It was almost comical how innocent he managed to look, and I realized that he may have just been an asshole looking to get a rise out of me. "I'm just getting comfortable," the man replied easily, stretching out his legs. "You don't mind if I stay here a bit longer, do you? It's really quite pleasant with the AC running like this." I stared at him incredulously, not even understanding what his game was. "Dude, get out of my car," I said with a slight edge of anger in my voice. "Oh, darling," he purred lowly, with a drawl so thick I could almost feel molasses coating his tongue. "You really are naive, aren't you? Did no one ever tell you what happens when wolves dress up like sheep and wander into the pen?" I stared at him blankly for several heartbeats, not knowing what else to do. I didn't think I would have to physically remove anyone from my car when I started doing this. The woman outside chose that moment to start moving again, lumbering slowly towards the mall entrance with heavy steps. "Get out," I managed hoarsely, hand tightening around the steering wheel, not sure if I was threatening or begging him at this point, but needing him gone nonetheless. The skinny man smiled. "Don't get your panties in a bunch now. I was just waiting for my girl to get her bearings." And with that, he finally got out and closed the door. I stared at the empty passenger seat, heart pounding in my ears as I tried to process what had just happened. He was finally gone, vanished into the mall with those two massive women, like they'd all been nothing more than a fever dream. Except that the lingering stench of sweat and floral perfume reminded me that they were indeed here. My hand shook a bit when I reached for my phone to end the ride. 1-star rating, with the reason being rider behavior. Though what one category could I pick that would really be accurate? I understood that I might encounter some weirdos driving in the middle of the night, but this had happened in broad daylight. Once someone got in, it felt like there was nothing you could really do until they chose to get out. What if someone got inside with a gun? Would there really be anything I could do in that situation? The heat continued to press down like a physical weight outside, making my skin slick with sweat despite the AC's best efforts. I needed air, fresh air that didn't reek. The mall called to me with its promise of cool corridors and being around some normal people. I parked haphazardly in a spot near the entrance and started walking. The automatic glass doors of the mall slid apart with a whoosh as I approached, and I felt blessedly cold, pristine air washing over my face like salvation. I stepped inside gratefully into the artificial oasis of climate-controlled shopping, where nothing could ruin my day anymore except maybe passing by a comic book kiosk and buying a few things I shouldn't. The main lobby stretched out before me in a dizzying array of stores. Macy's on one side, Nordstrom Rack across from it, with people picking things out of some clearance bins out front. As I walked towards nothing in particular, I saw a food court on the lower level. The scent of fried chicken mingled enticingly with pretzel stands, and you knew there had to be a Cinnabon somewhere too. But what I really needed at that moment was water, something cold to wash away the rank smell still clinging stubbornly to my nasal cavities. There was a kiosk near Victoria's Secret selling overpriced beverages. I grabbed 2 bottles without hesitation, uncapping one immediately and drinking half in quick gulps before stopping for air. The cashier eyed me warily as I fumbled with my phone, probably wondering if this was some kind of panic attack or maybe just a crazy person off their meds. She looked at me silently without comment, beyond a mumbled "thank you," when I finally figured out where to hold my phone for tap to pay. I nodded gratefully and turned away, already scanning the crowd for any sign of my ex-passengers, but they'd vanished like ghosts into the labyrinthine corridors of retail. This wasn't surprising, since the mall was crowded with weekend shoppers, families pushing strollers past racks of discounted clothes, teenagers giggling over makeup displays while their parents trailed behind checking price tags. It felt pretty normal, all things considered, but I still felt a bit shaken. Maybe I was just being paranoid and needed to relax the rest of the day. I needed water again, and downed the rest of the bottle in a few swigs. When I lowered it, I spotted them immediately. The 2 enormous women waddling slowly on the lower level near the food court, their bulk straining against their floral print muumuus that billowed like tents with each labored step. They moved in sync as if connected by invisible strings, heads bobbing slightly to some unheard rhythm, while shoppers subtly scrambled out of their path. It was surreal seeing them in here after the parking lot, doing such normal activities, but grotesquely misshapen and strange-looking next to others. Their size alone defied physics. How could anything living occupy that much space and still be able to move? Yet, there they were, flesh jiggling obscenely with every movement like overstuffed sausage casings about to burst. I leaned on the railing, watching them from a safe distance as people gawked openly or pretended not to notice. Some snapped creep shots discreetly, while others put their heads down and hurried away. The skinny man appeared then, slithering through crowds at a respectable distance. His gaze remained fixed on those 2 mountainous forms wobbling slowly toward a shop entrance in unison. What exactly was their connection? Why had they been in that car together if not related somehow? The women could be sisters maybe, though no family resemblance existed beyond sheer mass. And why wasn't he with one of them holding hands or something? Or at least walking next to them? Questions swirled through my mind as I continued to watch from above, a strange hierarchy at work that I didn't really understand. The two women waddled into a clothing store while the skinny man hung back, hands in pockets like someone waiting for an appointment. A muffled thump came from inside, something like a wet party popper going off. I leaned forward to see better when a woman stumbled out, face ashen beneath smears of makeup or something. She clutched her arm where what appeared to be nails poked out at random angles. A security guard approached cautiously, hand on his radio. "Ma'am, are you all right?" She shook her head wildly, eyes darting back to the store like she'd expected something to emerge behind her. She said something to the guard, but I couldn't hear what it was from my aerial observation point. The guard frowned at that, but didn't argue. I watched as more people began trickling from the store, some holding hands over bloody noses or clutching arms where nails had embedded themselves into their skin. A teenage boy emerged with a gash across his cheek that oozed slowly down onto his shirt collar, but otherwise seemed unharmed beyond that superficial wound. The scene below was chaotic, but already appeared to be contained. It almost felt like an accident, even though no one could explain what had actually happened inside of the store. The only real observation seemed to be that they just popped. Some movement caught my eye near the exit. A figure slipped out from behind a pillar, pale and unscathed. The skinny gentleman from my car glanced at the store with an odd expression I couldn't quite place. Disappointment? He seemed almost let down by how little damage had been done compared to what was supposed to happen. Then he vanished into the crowd like cigarette smoke dissipating on a swift breeze. I stood there staring at the empty space where he'd been moments ago, mind racing with unanswered questions. What was he even doing with those two women? Why had their bodies simply done that? The scene below continued in controlled chaos, shoppers milling about in shock, while security and random people tended to minor injuries. No one seemed seriously hurt beyond cuts from flying debris, which made the carnage inside of the store even more inexplicable. I turned away with a heavy sigh, going directly toward the mall's exit before police or emergency services showed up. The heat outside was as obtrusive as ever, and I resolved to just go home and rest. My car sat waiting patiently in the parking lot. I unlocked it, slid behind the wheel, and just drove home. I pulled into my driveway with the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the front yard. The house looked blessedly ordinary after everything I'd witnessed today, and suddenly all I wanted was a drink, a nice shower, and some brain-rotting television to keep me occupied. Inside, there was finally silence, broken occasionally by the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. I poured myself 2 fingers of whiskey from the cabinet, something strong enough to dull the edges without knocking me out completely. I settled onto the couch with glass in hand and stared at nothing while sipping slowly, letting the alcohol burn down my throat like a cleansing fire. My phone buzzed suddenly, cutting through silence so sharply I nearly dropped it on the carpet beside me. An unknown number flashed across the screen, but it was most likely a reminder call about summer PLCs at the school. I answered flatly. "Hello?" "Hey there," came the voice from before, the skinny man's nasal drawl offending my personal bubble despite the distance between us now. "You did good today, by the way. Didn't panic like most people would've." "What do you want?" I growled back, trying to keep my voice steady, even though my hands trembled around the cell phone receiver. "I just wanted to say thanks. he replied easily, as if we were old friends catching up after years apart, instead of complete strangers connected only by shared trauma. Not many would have stuck around long enough to see what happened next. What did happen? I demanded. My whiskey glass was all but forgotten on the coffee table beside me now, all attention focused solely on this conversation and whatever answers he might provide. Oh, that? Just a little experiment, came his breezy response. It was as if he was discussing the weather instead of human remains splattered across shopping mall floors. Wanted to see how much pressure it takes before something gives. I swallowed hard against the rising nausea at the memory. Those two women's bodies exploding into meaty confetti under fluorescent lights while shoppers screamed around them. Pressure from what? My voice cracked slightly, but I pushed through anyway. Life, he said simply, as though that explained everything, which it didn't at all. You're not making any sense? I know. He chuckled darkly through the phone line. That's kind of the point, though, isn't it? I stared at a wall across from the couch, trying to process what he meant by that. Look, I said finally after a long silence. If this is some prank or joke, then you've won, okay? Congratulations on scaring the shit out of me today, but can we just finish it? He cut in smoothly, like he was reading my mind again, which was starting to feel like more of a possibility. I paused mid-sentence, realizing he'd anticipated every word before I spoke them, planned this entire conversation down to the last detail, including how long the silence should stretch between questions and answers. Fine, I relented with a heavy sigh. What's left unfinished then? The part where you tell me what it felt like watching someone else die so stupidly and violently. His tone turned serious suddenly, all playfulness drained away, leaving only raw truth beneath the surface. I closed my eyes tightly against the memory, that split second when flesh tore open, revealing pulpy organs inside, before everything dissolved into gibbage hanging briefly in air, then settling onto concrete below. It felt like... I stopped, realizing I only felt confusion. Like what? He pressed gently as if sensing my struggle, not mocking, but genuinely curious. There was a long pause on the other end, so long I wondered if we'd been disconnected somehow before he spoke again quietly. I understand. His voice lightened slightly as if sensing a shift. You've got a good heart, friend. Don't let assholes like me ruin that for you. I almost laughed at the absurdity of being lectured about kindness by someone who'd orchestrated today's carnage. I'll try not to, I agreed wryly. Goodbye then, I guess. Take care, his reply came, a little bit too warmly. I ended the call, then sat motionless, staring at a blank wall across the living room while my mind processed events from start to finish, searching for any detail missed or clue overlooked. Nothing presented itself, though. Only the same images replaying endlessly behind my eyelids. Maybe there really wasn't anything more to glean. Maybe their bodies just had enough, and that was that. The preceding story refers to a bizarre encounter with the Pudgy Passengers, which involved two morbidly obese women, now deceased, and a male human of indeterminate age, approximately 1.6 meters in height, with an emaciated physique characterized by prominent ribs and clavicles. He displays no visible scarring or other distinguishing features aside from unusually pale skin and unnervingly light irises. The man exhibits heightened levels of intelligence and articulate speech patterns despite his physical condition, consistently displaying a detached yet calculating demeanor when interacting with staff. The man also possesses the paranormal ability to induce accelerated adipogenesis in female human subjects through unknown means. The process manifests as rapid subcutaneous fat deposition, transforming designated subjects into morbidly obese monstrosities within 24 to 72 hours of the man's invocation of his power. This bloating is accompanied by extreme discomfort and visible distress on the part of the subject, often culminating in sobbing or difficulty ambulating before their eventual demise. Upon reaching a critical point of adipose accumulation, estimated at approximately thrice an average female human's body mass, subjects undergo explosive decompression within seconds, violently rupturing skin and bone structures to disperse a viscous spray of blood, viscera, and pulverized flesh across the immediate vicinity. The force of detonation is sufficient to injure those within several feet and inflict severe shrapnel injuries on individuals not adequately protected. The man claims that this is a ritualistic process which allows him to witness the fullness of a woman's potential, citing an unspecified connection between adipogenesis and some undefined spiritual truth he seeks to unravel. He displays no apparent physical discomfort or fatigue during these rituals, often appearing contemplative rather than emotionally affected by the violent demise of his subjects. During initial testing after imprisonment, the man exhibited extreme agitation when presented with a mirror reflecting his own emaciated form. This resulted in several instances of self-inflicted minor lacerations to the abdomen and chest area, accompanied by whispered pronouncements regarding lacking fullness and unworthy vessels. Subsequent experimentation has confirmed that the man's ritualistic adipogenesis process is specifically targeted towards female subjects. Attempts to apply it to male or non-humanoid specimens have yielded no effect. Analysis of recovered tissue samples from exploded subjects reveals an abnormally high concentration of triglycerides and glycogen within adipose cells, suggesting a rapid metabolic acceleration preceding detonation. Further research into the nature of the man's occult ritual is ongoing to determine its precise mechanism and potential applications beyond simple biological augmentation.